Let me begin by thanking the Friends for their historical work for peace and justice. I especially want to thank them for you helping us create the Farm Labor Organizing Committee. It was the Friends that hosted the expansion of the Campbell Soup boycott back in the 80s, when we were fighting our first fight to win a voice for the voiceless in the tomato fields and the cucumber fields of northern Ohio and southeast Michigan. A strike of 2,000 workers, we walked out of the tomato fields. A strike that lasted 8 years, initiated in 1978. Several hundred returned every summer to picket the same fields to recruit the strike breakers that the growers and labor contractors had brought in. So we initiated the boycott that was in 1978. 1979, we launched this national boycott. It was in the early 80s that we expanded the boycott and sent people across the country to do the boycott, and one of the key cities was Philadelphia. The Friends opened their doors to us and gave us a small room to house our office in Philadelphia. Philadelphia was the home of many of the Campbell Soup executives that worked in the world headquarters across the Ben Franklin Bridge in Camden, New Jersey. So we made a campaign from the company's bank, which is the Philadelphia National Bank. Did a divestment campaign, organized some $30 million in an 8-week campaign to withdraw in a single day because of the bank's complicity in helping Campbell Soup with this oppression of agricultural workers. And it was the Friends that helped us coordinate, organize, find allies. And when we marched from Toledo to Camden, New Jersey in 1983, the last 2 days, Cesar Chavez came and marched with us through Philadelphia. It was the Friends who facilitated where we stayed, where we ate, where we slept in the last days of that march. And in 1986, Campbell Soup did what the whole world never thought would ever be done. They signed a supply chain agreement with Flock. They signed an agreement that brought together the suppliers, the farmers whose farms we worked for, and the farm workers in the same room. The local companies that contracted the cucumbers for Classic Pickle, which was a subsidiary of Campbell's, they brought everybody to one table as a result of the boycott. And we negotiated one deal, and with the prices from the top to the bottom, double the prices of the farmers, double the wages of the workers, made Campbell's buy a health insurance policy for the farm workers, because this is really the model of production in agriculture. It was then, is the model now, and it's the model of the future. But now they're doing it on a global scale. So we say, if we are going to bring justice for agricultural workers, not only in the United States, but also throughout the globe, we have to command these global companies to give the workers on the bottom of the supply chain freedom of association so they can negotiate their own ability to feed, educate, and clothe their families. So I'm asking you today to join a new campaign that we're launching that is based on our model that we're proposing with the global tobacco companies. Reynolds America, British American Tobacco, Alliance One, Universal Leaf, Philip Morris International, Japan Tobacco International. These 6 companies buy all the tobacco of the world. It's all consolidated through brokers, Alliance One and Universal Leaf, if they're not contracting them out directly. And I'm telling you that if we want to do something about the conditions of agricultural workers, let me tell you, worldwide, the ILO, 1/3 of workers in agriculture, 1/3 of workers in agriculture, 1.1 billion human beings in the world, 40–50% of them are employees. And they're the way they work can be described with systemic violations of their human rights and their labor rights. Widespread use of child labor, along with mining and construction, is the highest accident fatality rate of any industry. And there's a widespread use of migrant, temporary, and seasonal workers. And the denial of rights is endemic. Some countries, it is illegal for agricultural workers to form and join unions. Some, like the United States of America, exclude agricultural workers from labor legislation guaranteeing freedom of association. There's a complete lack of collective bargaining in agriculture. Less than 20% have access to social protections. And in places where they do, it doesn't work. And almost 5% have access to labor inspection systems. And those that do, it doesn't work either. Like in the United States, we have standards. We have the Department of Labor that's supposed to protect agricultural workers, but it is so complaint-driven that you set yourself up for retaliation if you complain. And there's no protection from retaliation. And the percentage of women increasingly make up the agricultural workforce in the world, up to 40% right now throughout the world. So you hear right now the big debates in our country about the separation of families. And I'm telling you that this is just a symptom of this global disease of inequity that's perpetuated by investor schemes, global corporation designs to marginalize people on the bottom of their global supply chains. Let me tell you, in this immigration debate, everybody's missing the point. It's either the wall or it isn't. It's either doing away with ICE or not. Let me tell you that we're dealing with the symptoms, folks. Let's get campaigns going to deal with the root causes. For instance, nobody's asking, why is there migration in the first place? Don't human beings have a right to be in their lands of origin, to be able to work, feed, educate, and clothe their families? Why aren't they? Why isn't that happening? I was just reading the other day the case of the assassination of Berta Cáceres. You know about that campaign. She was protesting the building of the Agua Zarca Dam in Honduras before they were attacked by the military apparatus of that country. Soldiers trained by our military in the United States. And we have supported dictators like Rios Montt in Guatemala, who was indicted for crimes against humanity. And they terrorize their people in their countries for the rich and powerful of those countries that have invitations of investors from North America. So our foreign policy supports that, oppressing people, giving our foreign aid to those people that they use against their own people. And then we wonder why they're trying to escape those atrocities. And Mexico is no different. Here we got the NAFTA agreement, right? Just in the commodity of corn alone, when you drop the barriers in the tariffs on corn at the Mexican border, 16 years ago when we initiated that deal? According to the Carnegie Endowment, in the first 5 years, we displaced over 3 million corn farmers in Mexico. Who were the beneficiaries of that? American corn farmers. Because our farmers are highly subsidized. You know, the farm deal, the farm bill, is the holy grail of agriculture. Well, Well, Mexico doesn't have any such subsidies for their farmers, so who do you think is going to win the market? And then we complain about those 3 million corn farmers trying to go somewhere to feed their families. So if you want to secure the border, we have to create justice in those countries so people don't have to leave. In 2004, some of you helped us win the Mount Olive fight. Remember that campaign? Lori Kamala. I spotted you right from the audience. She was one of the main fighters down there in that campaign. That boycott of the Mount Olive Pit Company, we were only after 70, 80 farmers that grew cucumbers from Mount Olive. And the reason we fought that campaign, because those cucumbers competed with the cucumbers of Ohio and Michigan. So here's the deal, whether it's global or domestic, corporations, they find the cheapest labor source that they can find. And they use that cheapest labor force against the other labor force that they've got producing their goods, right? So they try to pit this poor sucker over there against that poor sucker to see who can work for the cheapest. We said, we didn't let them get away with that, so we went to North Carolina and said, you're going to up the wages and the conditions of those workers to bring some parity with those our guys in Ohio and Michigan. But when we fought that campaign and brought that to a successful conclusion, we got more than we'd ever asked for. That just so happens, it's sort of God's way of sending a message to people on this earth, saying, you fight and write for the right and good thing long enough, great things will happen. Things that you don't even expect. We not only got those 70, 80 cucumber farmers, we got over 600 farms that were contracted under the North Carolina Growers Association. Because Mount Olive did not want to create a separate growers organization to facilitate our collective bargaining agreement. So they said there's already an association that included not only the 70, 80, 90 cucumber growers, but 600 growers that grew 32 different crops. So today, that number has grown to about 700 farms, and we cover now over 10,000 workers from the mountains of Tennessee to the coast of North Carolina, into Virginia and Tennessee. And the main crop that runs through that agreement is tobacco. And we already represent about 30% of all the tobacco growers in the United States. So our campaign right now is to pressure those tobacco companies to bring the rest of the growers under the umbrella of that collective bargaining agreement. Will you help us do that? Let me tell you why this is important. The campaign is against the tobacco companies, but it's not really just about tobacco, because the guys that harvest the tobacco also harvest 32 different crops. The farms are diversified. You have a union in a farm, you cover them for all the crops. And so we have been on a campaign to bring those corporations to the bargaining table with the same model as the Campbell Soup Agreement. We want a supply chain agreement because we have to look out for the farmers on whose farms we come to work on. Because if we don't have sustainability for those farms, we don't have a place to come to work. So, now they may not appreciate that. Like the Campbell Soup growers never appreciate, they fought us tooth and nail. Because they see they pit us up against each other. Even now, the immigration debate in Washington, when they talk about immigration reform, the growers, the Farm Bureau is campaigning for a slave labor program. Because they think the way they're going to survive and their sustainability is keeping the farm workers in poverty that come to work on their farms. That's the wrong solution. The solution is get the corporate people who are making the gazillions of dollars off the sweat of the farmers and the workers back to increase the prices, to put some money in the supply chain for the people on the bottom so they can sustain themselves. Now, we have to fight a lot of opposition. We have to fight a lot of detractors. I'm sorry to say that even some of our friends that are NGOs and anti-poverty programs. Look, when Lyndon Johnson started that war on poverty, we were all for it. See, but we thought that that war on poverty was supposed to be a transition, a step out of poverty into something else. We had to address the inequities in the economic systems so that people who are working, I'm not talking about disabled or injured people, we're talking about hard-working men and women. Now, everybody knows that agricultural workers are some of the hardest working people on this land. So why is it then, it sort of begs the question that if they're such hard-working people, why do they then qualify for food stamps and all these social service programs? I say enough of that. We don't want a handout. We don't want charity. What we want is a fair day's pay for a fair day of work. And I tell my friends in these social service programs and these NGOs, I said, look, if you guys don't go beyond what you're doing and demand that the people form their own organizations and speak for themselves, you're contributing to the problem because you are institutionalizing the inequity in the production system that exists. So look at it. Why should we give food stamps to a farm worker to keep him marginal so he has the strength to go out and work for the dirt cheap wages that he works? That doesn't make any sense. Enough of that. So we say we have to compel these companies to address the inequities in their supply chain. Now, the way we're doing this, let me just tell you, because I was in London and at the British American Tobacco Shareholders meeting in April, and we sat down with some of the executives after the shareholders meeting and had a private session. And we say, look, and it dawned on me at the moment in that discussion that it's pretty easy for them to throw us something here in the United States to settle us. But then they continue to threaten us with buying cheaper sources of tobacco from Malawi, Mozambique, Uganda, or Asia, or Latin America. So 2 years ago, we called upon the International Union Federation to bring together the tobacco sector organizations in Africa. So Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Uganda, we met with them in Malawi, and we crafted a global call calling on all the tobacco companies to implement a practical mechanism on freedom of association. That's all. Because if we have that, we can negotiate our own fate. And you don't have to do it by government regulations. We proved it when we signed that first agreement with Campbell Soup. There was no law that said they had to do that. There was no law giving us the right to freedom of association in Northern Ohio. Because of the boycott, because of your support, we compelled Campbell Soup to give us that agreement, and they implemented that mechanism on the ground, and we won that collective bargaining agreement. We can do it then. We did it with Heinz USA. We did it with Dean Foods, and Jane, and Green Bay Foods, and the Mount Olive Pin Company. We can do it with Reynolds America and British American Tobacco. Not only that, we can do this globally, my friends. We have to do it globally. It's not enough to ask just for ourselves now. We have to ask for our counterparts in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Now, I had a 2-hour conference call today. I'm on planning a steering committee with the International Union Federation and the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation to plan an agricultural workers meeting in South Africa in October. We would like to present this model to all agricultural worker organizations throughout the world to challenge global corporations in their supply chains to bring some measure of justice to the people on the bottom of their supply chains anywhere in the world where there are global supply chains. Let me tell you, if there's an opening to do that and to make that happen, we will make a dent on poverty, world hunger, child labor, and the abuse of people in the bottom of these supply chains. Can you help us do that? Here's what I'm asking you to do. After I finish speaking some of our homies, we have a urban homies union program with young people in Toledo, Latino, black kids who are on the margins of life in the city. Many of them are children of migrant workers that settled here. Many of them tell me their stories of their parents or their grandparents, how they came up from Texas or Mexico and worked in the fields of the Midwest. Now we're organizing their kids to not only navigate their own life, but also remember the struggles that their parents and foreparents had to go through to get here, and try to eliminate some of those obstacles for future waves of immigrants. So I'm going to ask them to spread out, distribute a leaflet after I finish talking to all of you. We want you to do a couple things. One, if you live anywhere in the country, there's 7-Eleven stores all over the country. There are Circle K stores all over the country, these convenience stores. In the South, you have Kangaroo chains. In the Northeast, you have the Wawa. These 4 convenience store chains are part of the McLean distribution system that distributes all of the tobacco products to convenience stores. And the convenience stores in America account for 1/3 of Big Tobacco's consolidated revenue. So if you want to get Reynolds' ear and British American Tobacco's ear, they start hearing from people all over the country saying, I ain't shopping at these stores until you remove the e-cigarette products, Vuse. That's the cigarette product of the future of British American Tobacco and Reynolds America. We're hitting one product, one that is high profit margin, that they're advertising like crazy. Didn't Dr. King say, when you impede the rich man's ability to make money, they'll negotiate anything? Well, let's go after it. So if you're able to do that, there's going to be a toll-free number that you can call the 7-Eleven headquarters in Dallas, Texas, and let them know that that's what you're doing. If they get calls from all over the country, they'll listen. Now, the other thing I'm going to ask you to do is a little harder. If you're willing and can, give us 1 hour a month to go to that convenience store and find 2 or 3 friends to leaflet on this boycott in front of that store. Let the manager know why you're doing it, and that you'll be doing it once a month until they remove use from their shelves. And then after you get done, go make the phone call again to headquarters in Dallas, Texas of 7-Eleven. If it's Circle K, we'll get you those numbers. If it's Kangaroo, we'll get you that number. If it's Wawa, we'll get you that number. But for starters, we know there's 7-Eleven stores all over the country. So I ask you to do those 2 things. That's it. Now, let me finish these remarks because I'm an organizer. I'm not here to tickle anybody's ears. And I want you to do what I do. This is what I do. I campaign, I find strategies, I try to figure out a way to get these workers a voice. Let me tell you what it's meant. Since we signed that agreement with the North Carolina Grower Association, we have filed on the average 700, 800 grievances every summer. Recoup millions of dollars in what would have been stolen wages. Last year, we recouped $500,000. Workers that wages were incidentally not paid. We had workers reinstated who were fired for no cause because they complained about stuff. Right now, we have a campaign for these 2 workers on a non-union grower at a big farm. Were fired because they complained that the roof was leaking in their cabin and the toilets weren't working. There were no separations between the toilets. And the farmer took exception to that. They have wage claims also. They are owed thousands of dollars. When the grower called his attorney, the attorney said, just put them on a bus and send them back to Mexico, not to pay them. Well, the workers called us, and we went to pick them up before they could get on the bus. And now we're doing this campaign to get them their wages, their money that they're owed. And we're signaling this to the tobacco companies because right now they're going to tell you all kinds of crazy things. Like, oh, yeah, we have this great auditing program to make sure all the workers' rights are respected and blah, blah, blah. This is the case in point. This farmer grows tobacco for Reynolds America and one other company, might be Japan Tobacco. But we're making it very clear that all these fancy auditing programs that they have, these NGOs that partner with them to give them a pass, you know, that's not going to work anymore. We've been around this too long a time, you know, to be deflected with those kinds of things. But people ask me time and time again, well, how long are you going to do this? You've been doing this for 50 years. And some people say, well, how did you start? I mean, how do you go about doing this kind of thing? See, but we didn't have no money. We were just tired of putting up with all the being taken advantage of. I got tired of watching my dad and mom get their wages stolen, all the verbal mistreatment that my mom and my little sisters received. A young guy gets angry about that and wants to do something about it. But when we started, we had nothing. We didn't have any money, we didn't have anything. But when you make a commitment to fight and you're doing something for somebody else, other people are drawn to you. And somewhere, somehow, the help comes. They see you not giving up. You got to stick with it and the people will come. So, it's true. None of us were doing this to get money. Nobody chose this occupation. This sort of chose us. But, you know, I grew up mad at God. I'll be real honest with you. My mom was a charismatic Catholic. You know, that's the evangelical version of the Catholic Church. And, you know, Mom and her sisters, when they'd have their prayer stations on Wednesday night and with all their hallelujahs and swinging from the rafters, I would argue with my mom and say, well, Mom, if there's a God, what kind of God is this? Has got us in this situation? No, Mico, nomás Dios sabe, only God knows, and don't worry, God is going to take care of us. And it wasn't until I had a conversion experience in '86 that my question was finally answered. And it wasn't like an audible voice, but it came to me that said this. It would have sounded like this. Well, now, Baldemar, had you not gone through all that stuff, all that exploitation, I would not now have a spokesperson on earth. Okay? I said, yes, sir. Send me. Okay, so people say, how are you going to survive? How are you going to eat? Well, those great songs on immigration, the scriptures about treating the stranger, the alien. So I tell people, the journalist Bill Moyers asked me that question on an interview. And I said, well, he said, don't you have a pension of any kind? I said, no, I don't have a pension. I'll get a pension when the farm workers get a pension. He said, my pension is Matthew 6:26. You know, where Jesus is talking and he says, you know, why are you worried about what you're going to eat tomorrow? Look at the birds of the air. They don't sow nor reap or store their grains in barn, yet my heavenly Father feeds them. How much more am I going to care for you? So that's my pension. So I haven't had the lack for food or anything. I mean, when you're doing something, people will come and they'll help you and they'll support you. And then you have to remember the old adage that we fight not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. you have to know that there's a spiritual dimension to this fight. And it's only in the spirit, because if you conduct yourself like a slave, you'll always be a slave. But if you conduct yourself like a free man and a free woman, you're a free person. No one can enslave you. And so, if we want to do on earth what is in heaven, you have to play out the victories that are already won. And I tell my friends in the evangelical churches who support Trump's immigration policies, is that how can you sit there and talk like that as someone who's supposed to believe God's word? Isn't it the Christian principle that God took everything to the cross? Everything nasty, everything bad that ever happened to you, that you ever did, and He shed His blood to give you the greatest amnesty ever given to man? Who are you to deny it to anyone else? So why is amnesty a bad word? We need to put that back in the immigration debate, because that's really what these struggles are all about. So I tell you that in order for us to succeed in this fight, if you can do those two things for us, and I know some of you can't get around as much as others can, but those of you who can, to do that monthly picket in your 7-Eleven store in your neighborhood, in your community, and send a message. Dallas will hear it. They'll let Reynolds America know about it, and we'll hear it from British American Tobacco. I guarantee you that we will hear that. And I can't tell you when all this is going to come to fruition, but I can tell you that it will come. I can't tell you the exact date, but I can tell you that it will come. Because as long as you continue to do the right and good thing, that is the real victory. The real victory is not signing that agreement. The real victory is when you commit your heart and soul and body to that struggle, because it's the right and good things to do. That's the real victory. Because without that, the things that you call victory will never happen. So let us go forward and this day on and saying, I commit myself to fighting this good fight until something unfolds and something happens. Now, I can tell you right now that from we're hearing from the tobacco companies, they seem to want to work something out. We just got to give them that extra hump. But if they hear from people all over the country in this campaign, I guarantee you they will come. They'll come calling, and they'll come some agreement. And don't be too surprised that someday you'll get the announcement that Reynolds America has finally signed an agreement guaranteeing freedom of association, but not only for U.S. workers, but workers throughout the globe where they can get their supplies of tobacco for their tobacco products. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.